Good morning, and thank you all for joining us today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Mike Schill, and my day job is as president of the University of Oregon. I also have the additional privilege of being chair of the Pac-12 and chair of the five president or chancellor search committee for our new commissioner. And today I would like to introduce to you the next leader for the Pac-12, whom you'll meet shortly. First, though, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the time and dedication of the other members of the search committee, some of whom are, I'm sure, watching us today. They include University of Washington President Annamarie Kose, University of Colorado Boulder Chancellor Phil DeStefano, University of Southern California President Carol Folt, and Washington State University President Kirk Schultz. I would also like to thank our search consultant, Turnkey ZRG, and its leader, Len Perna, who brought us an amazing group of candidates. And lastly, I would like to thank the outgoing president of the Pac-12, Larry Scott, for his leadership of the Pac-12, especially over the past year when we faced so many challenges due to the pandemic. Now, given the importance of today's announcement, I wish we were all together in person. However, the pandemic prevents us from doing that. The silver lining is that we can reach a much broader audience of media, athletic directors, and leaders and friends of the conference from all over the United States and world. Now, since February, the search committee and our search consultant, Turnkey ZRG, has spent hours and hours meeting with all of the presidents and chancellors of our member institutions, as well as dozens and dozens of stakeholders, including our athletic directors, our SWAs, our students, our FARs, to discuss the characteristics that a new commissioner should have. That outreach was critical for us in putting together the job description and helping inform who we were looking for, what we needed for a commissioner. We believe that our new Pac-12 commissioner has these attributes in abundance. And so we're delighted today to introduce to you the new Pac-12 commissioner, George Kliavkoff, a highly experienced and pioneering sports, entertainment, and digital media executive. He comes to us having immediately served before as the president of entertainment and sports at MGM Resorts International, one of the largest live entertainment and sports businesses in the world. Now, MGM, George was responsible for strategy, finance, marketing, operations, and ticketing for some 9,000 shows across 35 live entertainment venues, including a place near and dear to all of us, T-Mobile Arena, which has been a superb host to our Pac-12 basketball tournament for many years. And as you're going to hear from him in greater detail, George was a college athlete and went on to build an impressive career, including a stint at Major League Baseball Advanced Media, where George oversaw corporate and business development, as well as professional baseball's digital media subscription and licensing businesses. Also, he worked on incredibly impressive media deals with many familiar properties at Hearst Entertainment and Syndication, and served as NBC Universal's first chief digital officer. His experience and what drew us to George was his ability to see where the hockey puck was going to go. It attracted all of us to him. Intercollegiate athletics in general, and the Pac-12 specifically, is at a critical crossroads. We believe that George is the right person to meet today's challenges, but even more importantly, the challenges of the future. And he will lead the Conference of Champions to a great future. But you didn't tune in to listen to me. However, before I turn over the floor to George, let me make some closing comments about the process that led to our ability to recruit George. First, make no mistake about it, the Pac-12 commissioner job in our conference was seen as a highly coveted position where incredibly qualified professionals from all around the world applied with enthusiasm and were contacted and interviewed. More than 200 well-qualified, highly diverse candidates applied for this job. And George Kliavkoff came out of this process as someone who we have tremendous confidence in. He is very much a new prototype for sports commissioner. He is the sort of person that we need for this decade and the decades beyond. Even without serving a day in the job, George has thoughtfully challenged all of us to envision what is possible for the Pac-12, what is possible in the coming era of new technologies and media. He has a diverse skill set which was developed while navigating complex, quickly changing environments, and is a very successful consensus builder and someone who drives results. He's a visionary leader, and we are honored that he's going to become our next Pac-12 commissioner. In fact, the Pac-12 is not unique in facing many of these issues. Every conference out there has similar challenges. Therefore, I firmly believe that had we not hired George, we may have been competing against him in a later year. George has proven successful in every leadership role he has participated in, and I know I speak for the collective Pac-12 leadership when I say the conference is fortunate to have attracted a leader of his caliber. So I want to thank you all, and now I'm going to turn over the Zoom squares to George Kliavkoff.
Thank you for those kind remarks, President Schill. Good morning to all of you. I want to start off by thanking Arizona State University President Dr. Michael Crow and AD Raymond Anderson for hosting us this morning. I will spend a little time today talking about my personal and work history to give everyone assembled a sense of who I am and why I believe I was chosen for this role. But I wanted to be clear that I hope my tenure as commissioner is highlighted by a focus on our exceptional student athletes, our world-class universities, and on the best fans in college sports, rather than on the conference or the commissioner. With today's announcement, I believe I am transitioning from the best job in entertainment to the best job in sports. I made this jump because I'm passionate about the mission of the Pac-12 Conference to drive financial results, to help protect and expand scholarships, and support the other educational goals of our member institutions. I understand that I was not on any of the media's shortlists for this role, and that my name will be new to many of you, but I believe my personal style and work experience line up well with the enormous opportunities immediately in front of the Pac-12. First, from my days as a collegiate rower at Boston University, I've always loved everything about intercollegiate athletics. I credit much of my success in business and in life to lessons I learned as a rower in college, including the value of putting in the hard work, time management, accountability, and of course, teamwork. Second, I believe I have deep subject matter expertise in many areas that are immediate opportunities. I have a background in structuring complex media distribution deals, including an understanding of the ongoing transition from consumption of linear television models to digital. I have built and run large-scale live events, sponsorship, licensing, and ticket sales operations. And I have an understanding of lobbying and other efforts necessary to address some of the biggest opportunities and issues facing college athletics today, including name, image, and likeness, expansion of the CFP, and sports betting. Third, I've been fortunate to lead teams that have driven growth in both revenue and profits in every job I have held. Just quickly, here are a few highlights from my career. My first job in sports was as one of the senior executives in the early days of establishing Major League Baseball advanced media. At MLBAM, I managed corporate and business development and baseball's media subscription and licensing business across all digital platforms. After MLB, I became NBC Universal's first chief digital officer, setting NBC's corporate digital media strategy and developing new business models and markets. At NBC, we completed the then largest digital media event of all time with the 2008 Beijing Summer Olympics by delivering 10 million hours of video to 52 million unique visitors in just 16 days. Also while at NBC, I partnered with our competitor, News Corp, to form a digital media distribution joint venture that became Hulu, which turned into a top 5 US video site within 6 months. I spent 7 years at Hearst Corporation, where I was responsible for overseeing Hearst's 50% stake in the A&E, Lifetime, and History cable networks, and a 20% stake in ESPN during a time when ESPN was negotiating very complex sports licensing deals and establishing both the SEC and ACC networks. In my current role at MGM Resorts International, I oversee one of the largest live events companies in the world and also look after MGM's sponsorship spend, sponsorship sales, and sports betting ventures. At MGM, I also had the privilege to oversee the Las Vegas Aces and to sit on the WNBA's Board of Governors. I'm a big proponent of women's sports. As all of you know, at MGM, we partnered with the Pac-12 Conference for both men's and women's basketball championships, and in a deal in partnership with the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority and the Las Vegas Raiders to bring the football championships to Allegiant Stadium for the next 2 years. Throughout my tenure at MGM, I had the pleasure to work closely with the Pac-12 Conference staff to leverage opportunities and address challenges. The latter has been especially true in the 14 months since I was in the room at T-Mobile Arena when the decision was made to cancel the rest of the 2020 men's basketball tournament due to the COVID pandemic. Since that day, I've watched my new colleagues at the conference office work tirelessly and with an unmatched passion to protect athletes while still driving the conference business. I'm honored by my new opportunity to work even more closely with these amazing colleagues. Finally, and maybe most importantly for my role as Pac-12 Commissioner, my leadership style is relationship-driven. I've built long-standing relationships with nearly everyone I have worked with or negotiated against across a 25-plus year career in sports, media, technology, and entertainment. Once I start in July, my intention is to go on a listening tour. This starts with developing a deep partnership with the athletic directors and coaches. The success of the conference and my personal success in this role is tied to the success of the ADs and coaches. Of course, I will meet with the presidents and chancellors, other academic leaders, and the student athletes. My intention is to listen and to learn how the conference can help strike the balance between continued academic excellence, student athlete well-being, and an even higher level of athletic achievement. I want to be very clear about my top 3 immediate priorities for the conference. First, we will protect and support our student athletes. Second, we will make decisions to optimize revenue for our member institutions, including renegotiating our media distribution deals. And third, we will do everything we can at the conference level to make our teams more competitive in revenue-generating sports, especially football. To support all 3 of these priorities, I want to go on the record that the Pac-12 is in favor of both the expansion of the college football playoffs to more teams and the implementation of consistent guidelines for name, image, and likeness. We think that both CFP expansion and NIL legislation are good for college sports fans, good for our student athletes, and can be a significant competitive advantage for the Pac-12. As I end my remarks, I want to say that I greatly appreciate the confidence from President Schill, the Pac-12 Search Committee, and the Pac-12 CEO Group. I look forward to traveling around the Pac-12 and meeting with all of you in the coming months. Thank you for your attention.
Great. Thank you, both President Schill and Commissioner-elect Kliavkoff. We will now begin the Q&A session. As a reminder, media can select the raised hand tab at the bottom of your screen in order to be added to the queue. When selected to ask a question, please be sure to unmute yourself and to identify yourself by full name and media outlet. We have a question from Dennis Dodd of CBS Sports. Go ahead, Dennis.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, congratulations and welcome, George.
Thank you.
Just digging down real quick, specifically, how do you fix football on the field, with coaches and with the new TV deal?
Yeah, no, thank you for that question. As you can imagine, I anticipated that question. I'm putting on my reading glasses because I wrote down a few notes because there's a lot to talk about here. So listen, success in football is really important to the Pac-12. So I'm going to spend a few minutes going through this. I'll start by stating my deep belief that the Pac-12 can consistently compete and win for both football and men's basketball titles without jeopardizing our shared commitment to academic excellence or the well-being of the student athletes. My work on football will begin, as I mentioned, with meetings with the ADs and coaches and with my new colleagues at the conference office. I believe personally the solution to elevating Pac-12 football is a combination of addressing structural issues and a more focused approach on recruiting. So starting with the structural changes, as I mentioned in my prepared remarks, I'll be pushing to expand the college football playoffs. I believe that it's not good for college football and for the vast majority of college football fans when 20 of the 28 CFP bids, 71%, go to just 4 schools. Think about the fact that in almost any NCAA sport, an athlete has a 18 to 25% chance of participating in their sports postseason every year. In football, that number is 3% because of the current structure. I take a lesson from this year's men's basketball tournament. The Elite 8 teams included 6-seat USC, 11-seat UCLA, and 12-seat Oregon State. We just need chances. Structurally, we also need to review and address non-conference and conference scheduling, game times, and any other competitive decisions made at the conference level. Everything is up for review to make us more competitive. I want to be clear about that. Finally, on structure, we're going to invest to create standardized technology at the conference level to share with the teams to help the schools recruit and be more competitive on the field. With respect to recruiting and being competitive in recruiting, I think there are lessons to be learned from public and private institutions that make their lifeblood on being able to retain and attract great talent. I think we have to learn some of these lessons, particularly perhaps from our Silicon Valley friends. We need to make sure that high school athletes understand the lifetime value of a Pac-12 education. We need to be more aggressive about teaching the legacy of the Pac-12 as the Conference of Champions. At the conference level, we will invest to give Pac-12 athletes, football players and others, an opportunity to create a bigger social platform. We believe video creation and other tools help the athletes. And once NIL comes into effect, that will help the athletes substantially. Finally, we will be a proponent of consistent and a fair approach to name, image, and likeness legislation. And we believe that's a competitive advantage for the Pac-12 because of the markets we play in and the opportunity that some athletes will have to start immediately.
Great. We've got another question, this one from Nicole Auerbach of The Athletic. Go ahead, Nicole.
Hi, George. Nice to virtually meet you. My question is about the playoff expansion talking points that you've already got on day one. Do you have a preferred format or something that you as a Pac-12 representative would be making sure would be included? And just sort of, I was curious if you could just elaborate more on getting to that point already in this process and that stance.
I don't have a preferred format until I do the work necessary to understand the options. I am ahead of this particular opportunity because of what's going on at the NCAA with respect to looking at the college playoffs and the expansion and the reports that we've seen out of the CFP that things are being considered even as early as a June announcement. So I don't start till July 1st. So I was very clear with the presidents and the chancellors that I want to make sure our position that the CFP should be expanded was clear even before my first day on the job.
Great, thank you. We have another question, this one from Kyle Bonagura of ESPN.com. Go ahead, Kyle.
Hi, George. Wondering where you think the Pac-12 network fits into the conference's long-term strategy, if it does at all.
Yeah, so thank you for the question. I think media rights is just one of the big opportunities in front of us. I think we have several years to figure it out, but I think one of the first things is to determine when to start those renegotiations. With respect to the Pac-12 network, I believe it's part of the future of our media distribution strategy. Today, the Pac-12 network has far fewer subscribers than any other comparable network, and we have to fix that. I think there's a way to fix that through structuring and relationships, but we have to get the Pac-12 network distributed every place on every platform that our fans want to be able to consume that content. I also think about the media rights in the Pac-12 network as being a small slice of the media rights that we can create and distribute. There are some very obvious and perhaps not so obvious ideas to optimize the revenue from distribution of our content and slicing and dicing that content. It's candidly what I've done at many of my previous roles with great success. But just to be clear, I'm not going to get into those ideas before doing the work to validate them.
Great, thank you. We have another question, this one from Ryan of the LA Times. Go ahead, Ryan.
Hey guys, and congratulations, George. This question's for President Schill. Obviously, George's predecessor also, didn't necessarily have the college sports experience stepping into the job. And going with someone again that doesn't necessarily have that experience, what was the thought process?
So we were looking at a broad array of candidates, some of whom had college experience in terms of being athletic directors, some who didn't, and we judged each one. And I think that the major consideration that we had was who was going to, one, put our student welfare, the activities that take place on campuses, who had the values of the Pac-12 first, who was going to do that, and two, who was going to be able to set us up for the future. And I mentioned that in my remarks. It is very important that we're not just focused on tomorrow. The world is changing so dramatically that we need a forward thinker. And I think that we all, in talking with George and in talking with each of the candidates, really spent a lot of time thinking about the future, talking about the future. And we just felt that George had both the ability to handle the here and now, the values that we all share as part of the Pac-12, which we think are exceptional values, and the ability to sort of see the future and help us adapt to the future.
Great, thank you. We have another question, this one from Mark Anderson of the Las Vegas Review-Journal. Go ahead, Mark.
Hey, George. Obviously, the Pac-12 already has a pretty strong relationship with Las Vegas. Now that you're in place, how do you see that relationship evolving?
Well, I want to be clear. I am, with my family, relocating to San Francisco and will be working full-time in San Francisco. I think the emergence of Las Vegas as a sports capital of the world is significant. I think having our two major championships there is a good first step. I'd like to see us do more with Las Vegas, but I'm very, very focused on all of those other opportunities that I outlined first.
Thank you, George.
Great, we have another question, this one from Brandon of 24/7 Sports. Go ahead, Brandon.
Brandon is on mute.
If you could unmute yourself, Brandon, and you can ask your question.
Congratulations, George. Are you there? There we go.
Yes, thanks.
All right. Sorry about that. You were talking about three of your priorities: name, image, and likeness, college football playoff, but also you mentioned sports betting. And it's obviously a strange and kind of fine line there. We're talking about amateur sports. Kind of maybe expand upon that and why that's so important to you and how you see that going forward as it relates to the Pac-12.
Yeah, it's a very fine line and one that we'll walk carefully, and we'll do it in partnership with all of the member institutions. I want to just be very clear that anything we do in that space will start with a focus on two things: the integrity of the game and protecting the student athletes. So with that as a baseline for how we're thinking about sports betting, I look at the market and I say that 3 years ago with the overturning of PASPA by the Supreme Court, we now have more than half of the US states that have legalized sports gaming. The experts say that's going to be a $20 to $25 billion market by 2025. We do know that the illegal sports betting market is $150 billion today. So to be clear, people are betting in our states on our sports. Broadly speaking, having that be under government control, taxed, monitored with software and technology that allows you to protect against problem gambling and to protect the athletes, I think is a better solution. But what the commissioner's office will do in this particular respect is do the work necessary to make the recommendations to each of the member institutions and then leave it to the member institutions to decide how to navigate this opportunity.
Great, thank you. We have another question, this one from Brian Howell of the Boulder Daily Camera. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, George, I was actually going to ask the same type of question about sport. Colorado last year entered an agreement with a sports gambling partner. I'm just curious if you see that as something that's become more prevalent in college athletics as time goes on.
So the University of Colorado did a sports betting sponsorship with PointsBet. They, I believe, were the first one to do anything, certainly the first and only one so far in the Pac-12. I'm not going to prejudge how quickly that's going to become prevalent or not. Just don't know the answer. I think my focus will be on helping the presidents and the chancellors and the athletic directors understand the opportunity, understand any risk associated, make sure we have everything in place to, as I said, protect the integrity of the game and protect the student athletes, and then leave it to the individual schools to make their own decision about how to navigate that opportunity.
Great, we have another question, this one from Bruce Feldman of Fox and The Athletic. Go ahead, Bruce.
Hi, George. When did a job such as this one first enter your mind as something you'd be intrigued by? And then the other part of it is, how would you ultimately define being successful in this job?
Yeah, so you don't grow up as a fan of sports and an athlete without thinking of becoming a commissioner somewhere someday. So the answer is very, very young. I was surprised to get the call. I was delighted to get the call. I did the work necessary to determine that this was a great fit for me, but also more importantly, that I thought I could significantly contribute to the future of the Pac-12 conference. I'm going to measure my success against those three criteria that I spoke about at the end of my prepared remarks. That's the immediate three opportunities. We're going to focus on those. The opportunities will change over time. We will reset the field goals, but for now, those are the three opportunities I'm looking at.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have another question, this one from Steve Kroner of the San Francisco Chronicle. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, George, congratulations. A kind of broad question. What is the Pac-12's greatest strength and what is the Pac-12's greatest weakness?
Pac-12's greatest strength is the member institutions and the student athletes. We have some of the greatest institutions, not just in the country, but in the world. The value of a Pac-12 education cannot be overstated, and we're going to make a big deal about making that very, very public. The greatest weakness, if we're honest with ourselves, is the number of years it's been since we won a football or men's basketball championship. And we're going to do everything we can at the conference level to fix that.
Great. We've got another question, this one from Sam Connon of the Daily Bruin. Go ahead, Sam.
Hi, George. Congratulations on getting the job. I'd just like to follow up on a question that Ryan asked President Schill earlier about how you don't have administrative experience in college athletics. How do you plan to make best decisions with the student athletes in mind? And how do you expect to kind of involve them in conversations or anything like that, not coming from that background?
Yeah, so I was a student athlete, but that's a long time ago. I think conference operations and working in an academic environment are certainly new challenges for me. But I have to think that almost every job I've taken, if you go back through my CV, has involved jumping into unknown structures, and I've found success at each of those. For me, historically, not coming in with preconceived notions about how things should operate or should be has always played to my advantage. That said, I'll need my colleagues at the conference and input from the ADs and the coaches and the student athletes to help guide me through some of the nuances. And it may make sense to bring in a senior level person to focus on that part of the job. Stay tuned.
We have another question, this one from Michael DeCourcy. Go ahead, Michael.
Yes, George, congratulations. I don't know if this is too specific in your discussions about the expansion of the college football playoff. When you advocate for expansion, are you advocating for automatic qualification for conference champions?
I have not done the work to be able to answer that question. I haven't had the insight necessary to give you an answer to that. It will be part of what I'm focused on. I'm sure I will start working on that even before my first day in the office, and I'll be happy to partner with everyone at the conference who focuses on this every day. I just don't have an answer to that today.
We've got another question, this one from Andrew of KEZI TV. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
George, very nice to meet you virtually. Congratulations on the new job. I am curious, though. This is a job that and a conference that has had its share of PR issues over the last few years. You're coming from one of the biggest entertainment companies in the world. Why take this job?
Well, I think I mentioned at the beginning, I truly believe in the mission. I believe that if we do our jobs correctly and we increase the distributions to all of the member institutions, that creates opportunities in the form of scholarships and other academic support for men and women. My previous job was important. Our mission at my previous job was to entertain the human race. I think we did a pretty good job of that. I want to focus on this new mission, which I think has significant importance in our society.
We have another question, this one from Adam Rittenberg of ESPN. Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, hi, George. Congratulations. I just wanted to ask, how do you balance your effort in terms of building relationships on campus versus building relationships or growing existing relationships in the corporate world or in the business world?
I think you can do both. I don't believe they're mutually exclusive. I've worked in many companies that have very difficult and multifaceted constituencies and been able to balance all of the needs of all of those constituencies to drive forward the business that I was put in charge of. I believe the same will be here.
Next question, we have one from Lane Higgins of the Wall Street Journal. Go ahead, Lane.
Hi, George. Thanks so much for making the time and congratulations. And I just want to follow up on a point you made a little bit earlier. You mentioned that you may be interested in bringing in another person with perhaps a more extensive background in higher education. And I'm curious if you could kind of outline how you might imagine that role differing from the role of commissioner, just because that would be a pretty unprecedented structure for this type of athletic conference at this level.
I don't think it's appropriate to get into those details today. As I said, stay tuned.
Great. We have another question. This one from Brandon Kamerman of KVAL TV. Go ahead, Brandon.
Hi, George. Congratulations on the position. You'd mentioned your support of women's sports. I wonder, how can you further strengthen that within the Pac-12? And is there a role the Pac-12 can play in strengthening that nationally, maybe even globally?
I think the Pac-12 is already playing a significant role in that. I look at the women's basketball championship, and I truly believe, having run the Las Vegas Aces and having been a significant participant in the women's basketball tournament that we host in Las Vegas the last couple of years, that women's basketball is one of the up and coming sports. People will realize what a great, fun sport that is to watch and how athletic these young women are. I think there's upside in that sport. I also think about the broader sports, some of the Olympic sports, and the success that the Pac-12 has had in creating champions in women's sports. And I want to continue to invest in that.
Looks like we have another question from Dennis Dodd of CBS Sports. Go ahead, Dennis.
President Schill, this is by all accounts the second non-traditional candidate, at least in the conference commissioner realm. What made this desirable? What made George desirable to be a guy that hadn't been on campus?
As I'm listening to this, I'm seeing it in every answer he's giving you. He's incredibly thoughtful. He has great values. He knows what he knows, but more importantly, knows what he doesn't know. And he also is, I think what you're seeing today is he's not going to let expediency put him into a corner. He's going to get into the job, understand, just as he's understood and mastered each of his previous jobs, and then do what's necessary. So all of those characteristics, I think, are what drew the board unanimously to George. And I think that he will be able to bring talent to the Pac-12 to be able to complement his knowledge base. And I think, but he's not going to put that all out for you today. He will experience that in his first months in the job.
And then I have a follow-up. Can I ask it?
I'm fine with that.
Oh, this is for George. Is there any value in, I guess, modeling having the conference go out to bid right now? In other words, restructuring the media rights contract now, as opposed to waiting till it's up?
There are preclusions in the existing contracts that talk about when we can start thinking about that. It's certainly before the end of the term. We're going to dig in and we're going to understand what those opportunities are. And we will be very thoughtful about when we start those discussions. I can't give you a timeline today.
When is the next look in, if I can ask?
You can ask. I'm not going to answer.
Okay, thank you.
Great. We've got time for one last question. Cheryl Coward of Hoop Feed. Go ahead.
Hi, I was wondering about the women's basketball tournament now that Key Arena is set to reopen, and if there are any thoughts of bringing it back to Seattle or if it will stay in Las Vegas, and also maybe a little bit about your synergy between the WNBA, women's basketball, and the ACES, and how you expect to elevate the sport, given that you have a national champion.
Yeah, listen, you're putting me in a difficult spot because I'm still an MGM employee for the next 3 or 4 weeks, and we have an existing contract, and it will be in Las Vegas till the end of that contract, and then we'll look at what the best thing is for the Pac-12 after that. I think elevating the sport is about giving it more media exposure. Women's basketball is one of those things when people get to see it and watch it, and particularly in person, but also on television, they fall in love with it. So I think it's just about elevating the exposure for that sport, and candidly for many of the other sports. But again, want to be clear, we know where the bread is buttered. We're focused on the revenue sports and winning in men's basketball and football.
Thank you.
Thank you, President Schill and Commissioner-elect Kliavkoff, and thank you all the members of the media for joining today's Zoom video conference. As a reminder, this conference has been recorded and we will be distributing both video and audio files following the conclusion of this conference. So thank you again and have a great day.
Thank you.